Hi guys, welcome back to Elephants in the Room. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm turning 26 in 2 weeks. So I thought in honor of turning 26, I would reflect on the 25 years of my life and the most valuable lessons I've learned over those 25 years. So the 25 lessons have to do with relationships, my relationship with myself, career, work, wellness, and then also just trauma, obviously. You guys know I like to talk about that. So I wrote down 5 of the most valuable lessons I've learned from each category, and I want to talk about them today. And I think because I'm about to turn 26, which is like, I'm literally like almost exiting my mid-20s. Once I become 27, then I'm going to be in my late 20s. So 25 is like obviously such a, it's literally like a quarter of your life primarily. So it's kind of a big deal. And I feel like I've learned a lot, especially since I was 18. So yeah, I just thought I would share some of these things with you guys today because I feel like these are things that I wish I knew. Not to say that I wish I could go back and change what happened, because it's what all led me to learn these things and to really know these things. And so my goal and my hope is not that I change your guys' mind or perspective on life or hold you back from learning these lessons yourself. Also considering that all of our opinions are so limited to our circumstances and what we've been through. But I guess I just want to encourage you guys and maybe save you guys some of the time or tears or struggle that I wasted on some of these things, and just be an encouragement, not to say that it's going to change your guys' minds or that you won't have to go through these things yourself. But these are just some things I would tell my younger self. Again, not because I necessarily have any regrets, because it has all led me up to this point and why I am here and why I am who I am today. But if I could spare my younger self, in a perfect world, if I could spare my younger self the time of learning these things, these are the things that I would share with her. So the first thing I want to talk about is relationships, and some of the lessons I've learned about relationships. Now, this one is very complex because I think relationships are so complex, and I think it's really hard because every relationship is so unique to the individual and to their partner and to their life circumstances, to their trauma. There's just so much that goes into relationships. And I think oftentimes people come on social media or on podcasts or whatever, and they kind of make these relationship claims that are very black and white. And my goal is not to do that. My goal is to just share from my experience and in a very broad term, kind of share with you guys what I've learned through being married and divorced, and also being in other relationships as well, and just over time in my life, what I've learned, some hard things I've learned about relationships. So oftentimes I think we settle for people who don't prioritize us as their first option, and or they always make it known that they have other options and or are prioritizing other options, whether that's another partner or just another thing in their life that they put before you. Other than obviously Jesus and themselves, they shouldn't be putting things that don't matter above you. And so if you feel like you're not a priority in a relationship and you've never felt like you're someone's first choice, you're always going to feel like you're their last. And I say that to say that it's so important to be with someone who doesn't make you feel like you're an option and doesn't make you feel like you are at the bottom of their priority list. That's not to say that they can't have things that come before you. And I think that's different for everyone based on your morals, based on your values, whether that's, their family comes before you, their relationship with God comes before you, their work, whatever it is. Like, I'm not saying that it has to be one specific way, but if you feel like you guys don't have the same values and morals and what is supposed to be prioritized, that's obviously a problem. But more than that, if you feel like you fall short on their priority list of where you're supposed to fall, that's an issue. And I think that that's oftentimes not something that you can change. Like, if someone makes you feel that way, that's not something that's going to change, which I think can be a hard pill to swallow. But at the same time, just to encourage you guys that, like, there is someone who is going to put you first and who is going to make you feel like they're your first choice. It's like, you don't want to feel like you're someone's last choice or that you're just a convenient choice. You want to feel like someone chooses you, and you want to feel like if you were in a room with 1,000 people, regardless of all the factors, that person would still choose you because they love you and they value you for who you are. So I think that is something that I had to learn, because I used to think that, well, if I just do everything right, then I can be their first choice and can convince this person that I'm the best thing or the best fit for them. Like, if I do more, maybe I'll be enough. And that's just unfortunately not true, I don't feel. So that's one of the hard things that I've learned about relationships, but also one of the powerful things I've learned, because then, if you don't feel that way, you can readjust or reassess what relationship you're in and if it's the right one. And then the next one I want to talk about, which is really important, and something that totally happened to me, and that I feel like I will forever have to actively work towards not doing, is it is so easy to lose yourself in a relationship. Most of the time when people exit relationships, especially unhealthy, toxic ones or abusive ones, the first thing that they say is, I lost myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. And it's usually because you give and pour so much of yourself to this person that you stop prioritizing yourself, and you stop giving to yourself, and you stop just being yourself, because you're trying so hard to be what that person wants you to be and what that person needs, and you lose sense of who you even were to begin with. And this definitely happened to me in my marriage, 100%. And it got to a point where I had to realize that keeping him was not worth losing me. And there was no way for me to continue on that relationship and in that relationship without losing myself. Like, I lost my sense of self-worth. I lost my identity. I lost so much love for myself. And I was so wrapped up in everything going on in that relationship that I wasn't even allowing myself the time or space to be me or explore me or cater to my dreams or my desires or my goals or my needs. And so I feel like that's so often why you see people, when they finally get out of relationships, they go through this whole like glow up transformation, because they start, building and investing time into a business or a passion that they love. They start investing into their health and exercising. They start investing into, what they eat and what they do, and journaling and spending time with God, and all these ways their lives are improving because they're pouring into themselves. And usually it stems from a place of they weren't pouring into themselves when they were in those relationships. And so it's so important to do those things and to prioritize yourself and to stay true to who you are, even when you're in relationships. And so that's why, like, this is like, I guess you could say like a hot take, but I always tell people, like, I don't think you need to be perfectly healthy and perfectly stable and perfectly successful to be in a relationship. Because I think that taking care of yourself and growing and learning and improving your mental, physical, spiritual health can all be done in a relationship. And truly, I feel like that's the healthiest way to operate, because it's like, if you think that you like have to do all these things and then reach this level, and then once you're at this level, well, then you can just enter a relationship. It's like, it's not a task that is just completed. It's like an ongoing thing that you always have to do, no matter the level of success or physical or spiritual or mental health that you're at, or healthiness. It's like, when you get in a relationship, you can't just stop doing those things. You always have to be doing those things. And like, you're always growing, you're always changing, you're always evolving, you're always discovering new things about yourself. And so I feel like that is something that I am working every day in my relationship to practice, is like not losing who Nicole is, not losing my sense of self, not losing what I love to do, not losing who I am at my core to compromise and or sacrifice. Well, not to compromise and or sacrifice, but to mold into what my partner wants me to be, which, if you're truly in a healthy relationship, I feel that they won't want you to be anyone other than yourself, than your best self, right? It's not to say that your partner shouldn't challenge you to grow, but if your partner's trying to change who you are at your core, maybe they're just not the right partner for you. You know, and I've said this before, it's funny. In one of my relationships that I was in, I remember my partner told me he just like didn't like my personality. Like, he was like, I don't like your personality as much as I thought I did, like when we first got together. And that was obviously a low blow, right? That made me feel like crap. But because of how low my self-esteem was at the time, and because of how beaten down I was, I felt like I had to change who I was to be what he wanted me to be. And that's just wrong. It's like changing my personality, like my sense of humor, you know? And so sadly, I did compromise a lot of my standards, my morals, my values, my own well-being for that relationship. But now I actively try to do everything I can to never do that again. Because at the end of the day, like, you have you and God. And you want to be with someone who not only loves you for who you are, but you also want to be with someone that helps you feel comfortable in your own skin, and who wants you to fill up your cup just as much as you fill theirs. So that's another really important thing I've learned about relationships. The next one, it's a long list, we're only on number 3, is singleness is a gift. I didn't used to think this. And I think obviously when you're single, it's a lot harder, you know, easier said than done. Like, people who are in relationships that are like, oh, singleness is a gift, like, don't be sad. You know, it's obviously not that easy. And I understand, like, when I was in that season of singleness, post-divorce, it was really challenging for me. And I did have bitterness and jealousy and envy of people in relationships. But looking back now, that time of singleness was so precious. It was so precious, and it was so essential for where I am now, who I am now, my identity, my self-worth, and also my relationship now. Like, if I wouldn't have had that time for myself to grow, change, develop a really strong relationship with the Lord, grow a sense of self-love, grow a sense of self-trust and self-worth, self-identity, and really rely on me and God, mainly God, I wouldn't have been able to enter this relationship and or be in my current relationship as healthy as I am. Not to say I'm perfectly healthy, but all I'm saying is you don't need someone. And if you feel like you need someone, that's a problem. Like, you don't need anyone. You are okay on your own, and you will be okay on your own. And when you get to that place of contentment and satisfaction with just you and your relationship with the Lord, I feel like that's when someone truly comes along. And a whole nother part of that is just that, like, it's really hard to know if you're in a relationship for the right reasons, if you're just deeply, deeply desiring and or settling because you just want to fill that hole with someone. It's like you should be dating someone or marrying someone or in a relationship with someone because you love who they are, you love their qualities, you know, have the same values and morals, you have the same life goals, and you want to create a life together, not because you so deeply want to have that person or a person in your life. So I think that singleness is challenging and sad, but it's like, looking back, it was such a gift, and it promoted so much healing, it promoted so much growth, and truly was the time when I really was able to start to learn to love myself. And I wouldn't take it back for the world. It's so good. And so if you're in a season of singleness and you're struggling, I just want to encourage you that it's such a season of replenishment and filling up for you and your spirit and your heart and your self-esteem and your identity. Like, it's such a beautiful time that you get to solely focus on you. And if you believe in God, the Lord, too, it's like, that's so special to have that time to just prioritize your health, your wellness, your mind, your self-esteem, your passions, your goals. It's like you get to invest all this time and energy into you. And that's such a beautiful thing, and it won't always be that way. And so it's like enjoying it while you have it is really special. So that's one thing that I have learned, that in the time I didn't feel that way, but looking back now, I see it as a huge gift. And the next one I want to talk about kind of bleeds into what we talked about a little bit before, but you can't make someone choose you, no matter how hard you try, and no matter how much you give. It was probably one of the most challenging lessons. I think oftentimes when we love someone and we really desire for our relationship to work, and we really desire for someone to love us the same way that we love them, we love to put it all down, on a paper, like a checklist of things. And if we feel like we can check all of their boxes, and if we feel like we can give them everything they need, and if we feel like we can meet every standard and expectation of the physical appearance they want or the whatever they want, that will be enough for them to choose us. And I think it really is so hard when you're in it. It's so hard to feel like when you love someone so much and you want them to choose you, and you don't understand why they don't reciprocate that love. It's so easy to make it about you, and it's so easy to feel like you're not enough, when in reality, that's just not the way that love works and the way that life works. It's not about someone not being enough for you. Oftentimes it's just about either they're just not the right person for you, or they're not in the right place to even appreciate what you bring to the table, or you're not compatible, or, there's so many different reasons as to why someone doesn't choose you. And I think we love to get wrapped up on all the things that could be where we're lacking. It's like, it's hard to see the big picture, and it's hard to not take it personal, because rejection feels like such a personal attack. And especially if you're someone who struggles with low self-esteem or who has been abandoned in the past, or has trust issues, whatever. And so it's like, it's so easy to feel like you're not enough for them. And that if you just keep giving, and if you just keep sacrificing, and if you just keep changing who you are to try to fit what they want, or even if you feel like you have all the things that they want, yet they don't want you, it's so easy to it's like you're doing everything. It's so easy to keep trying to do everything in efforts that they'll change their mind. But it's not going to work. You just can't force someone to love you and to choose you. And oftentimes it's so much less about you than it seems, and then you feel. It's so easy to feel like it's all about you, and it's all about what you lack, and it's all about how these other people or this other thing is better than you or more valuable than you. And that's just not true. Like, it's just so much more complex than that. And your worth isn't defined by how someone else chooses to value you, and there's so many sayings about this, like, that we've all heard. Like, I'm trying to think of the one. It's like, like if a package shows up at the wrong house, it doesn't mean that the package isn't valuable, but it's going to be returned to sender, right? So it's like, you just may be at the wrong house, but it doesn't mean that someone's not expecting and hoping and desiring for that package to show up on their door, So I know you guys have heard that before, but that is really so true and so important to remember. And the next thing I want to talk about, which I feel like is kind of not talked about a lot, is you don't just walk into a healthy relationship. You and that person make the relationship healthy. I think this is so skewed because people always talk about, oh, I was in this toxic relationship and now I'm in this healthy relationship. And there are obviously a lot of characteristics and or ways you can identify a healthy relationship versus a toxic one. But you don't just walk into a relationship and it's just healthy. Oftentimes what makes a healthy relationship is two individually healthy people who come together and work through things together to work towards healthiness. We all have wounds. We all have trauma. We all have an attachment style that we developed when we were young. And oftentimes those attachment styles flare up in your relationship and they bring in old cycles and behaviors and patterns and coping mechanisms from past things that you've gone through in your relationship. Like, there is unhealthiness in every person's relationship. There is toxicness in every person's relationship. A healthy relationship is two people working towards getting healthy individually and together. Like, no relationship is just going to be healthy without work. And so I think oftentimes when we get out of toxic relationships, we are searching and or hoping to find healthy ones. And for anyone who's been in a toxic relationship, you most likely have some sort of trauma and or hurt or pain or root as to why you ever ended up in a toxic relationship in the first place. And oftentimes our trauma affects who we choose in a partner because of these subconscious patterns that we have created. And so it's pretty impossible to think that you're never going to go after the same type of person or the same type of situation. But if you and your partner can both identify and accept and take accountability for the ways that your past and or trauma affects your relationship and start to work towards healthiness with a therapist, with a church, with whatever tools you find through books and the internet, that's where you truly find a healthy relationship. It's two healthy individuals who are self-aware enough to work, to actually put the work into their relationship to be healthy, because I think we'd be shocked by how much like our trauma and what we've gone through whether it's in relationships or in our childhood, affects our relationships. I just think a lot of people aren't aware of it. So that's one thing. And the next thing is revenge and getting even is not gonna, it's not gonna take away the pain. And truly, it's so overrated and really so not necessary. Like, I think when we've been wronged, there is a part of us that wants to get even with said person, especially in a relationship, someone who hurt us, maybe for a long period of time. But it's like the greatest myth that seeking revenge and getting even will make you feel better about yourself or about what happened to you. Like, it won't. You're just stooping down to their level. And you don't want to do that. In the moment, things that I've done or things that I've said that in the moment felt good. It's like there was this fleshly desire in me that it felt good to like seek this revenge or talk poorly about this person or do this. It never brought me joy. It never brought me peace. It never made me feel better about any of the things that have happened to me. So I want to read this verse that I love about revenge, because I feel like this was a game changer for me when I was going through everything that I went through with my divorce and starting to unpack and heal from all my childhood trauma. And now I lost it. Shoot, where is it? I gotta find it. So it's Romans 12:19. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it says, for it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. And you guys have heard the other verse, like, you reap what you sow. And that's actually one of my other things on here, but you reap what you sow. And the truth always comes out. The light will shine in the dark places. That's also a Bible verse. If someone has wronged you, if someone has hurt you, they'll get what's coming to them. The consequences of their actions will eventually catch up to them. You might feel like right now, I'm dealing with the consequences of their actions and they're not having to deal with it. And I'm in pain and I'm in misery because of what they did. And they're free. They're not even having to face the pain. And I just want to say, without saying too much, you reap what you sow. It will come back around to them. But the best part is, it has nothing to do with you. And the best part about it is that just as they will reap what they sow, flip that, you will reap what you sow. If you are honorable in a relationship and honest and you were wronged and hurt and mistreated, and you stayed true to your morals, to your values, to your character, you will reap the benefits of that. It may not be in that relationship, maybe in the next, and maybe in a different way, but you reap what you sow, and they will reap what they sow. And leave God's wrath to Him. Let God deal with them. There's nothing more powerful than being hurt by someone and saying, God, I'll let you have this one. And I just want to remind you that Jesus flipped tables. Jesus doesn't like people who hurt people, who wrong people. He doesn't like those things. Jesus has righteous anger. So it's not to say that He's going to go and punish someone, but we reap what we sow in this life. Things will come around. You don't need to seek revenge. You don't need to get even with someone. And you don't even need to worry about them. Like, let it be their own thing. You reap what you sow. That's like one of the most powerful verses and just lessons of all time. Okay, so the next 5 lessons that I want to talk about are in regards to your relationship with yourself. And this is coming from someone who really struggled with self-worth, self-trust, self-identity, all due to choices that I made and also due to my childhood trauma and my relationship trauma. So, and just the attachment style that I obviously developed as such a young child, which was an anxious attachment style. And if you don't know what that is, you can go and look it up. But let's talk about some of the things I learned about self-love. If you want to love others from a pure place, you have to learn to love yourself first. I know I'm like beating a dead horse when I talk about this because I've talked about this so many times on this podcast, but guys, part of loving others truly and deeply and from a pure, genuine place starts with loving yourself. Because the Bible even says it itself. Like, love God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. Like, that's one of the greatest commands. And so that verse, I've talked about it before, but love your neighbor as you love thyself. If you don't love yourself, how are you supposed to love someone else? I mean, the Bible even says it. Like, if we're loving our neighbor the way we love ourselves and we don't love ourselves, we don't respect ourselves, we don't care about ourselves, how are we supposed to reciprocate that? Because oftentimes when we don't love ourselves and we are trying to love others, it's coming from a place of insincerity in a lot of ways, because maybe we're loving that other person in attempts to make them love us because we don't feel like we're enough. And that's not a pure place of love. Love has no conditions. So bluntly and frankly, you have to learn to love you before you love someone else. Because if you feel like you really, really love someone else and you have no love for yourself, if you really looked at why you love that person and why you're giving to that person and not giving to yourself and doing all these things, it's like, what is your true deep intention deep down in your heart? Because when you're pouring from a glass that's full, you're pouring like this outpouring extra, but you're filled up. But when you're pouring from an empty cup, like there's literally nothing to really truly give because you're like dehydrated. You need water, you need love that you're trying to give. And so it's like, you just need to learn self-love before truly being able to love others properly. And on that same note, and if that's an episode you guys want me to do, like mainly on self-love and how I was able to start to love myself and find self-identity, I totally love to do that if that's what you guys want. It's hard to explain it all in depth on this episode, especially because we're like kind of blazing through these 25 different things. But the next one and the next lesson is you deserve to give yourself the same love, compassion, patience, respect, and reassurance that you give to the ones you love. So I think this kind of ties into what I just talked about. But when you look at your friendships and your romantic relationships and your family, like think about the person that you love most in this world and you look at the way that you treat them. Do you honor them? Do you respect them? When they fail you or they hurt you, are you patient with them? Do you forgive them? Do you give them time? Do you give them space? Do you invest your heart into intentionally making their lives better and blessing them and being there for them when they're sad and comforting them, reassuring them, like all the things and all the ways you love people? Are you giving yourself that same love and respect? Truly, like I really want you to think about that. And at 19, 20 years old, I wasn't. I was giving so much to others, so much respect, so much love, so much patience, so much forgiveness, but I was not patient with myself. I was so hard on myself. I didn't respect myself because I let people mistreat me and take advantage of me. And I didn't validate myself. I was not giving myself the love that I was giving to others. I wasn't laying my life down for myself, just like I do for others. And I just want to encourage you that just as much as you show up for your friends and just as much as you show up for the people you love, you have to show up for you. That is just so important. And if that's uncomfortable and that's hard to do, I understand. But I really just want you to think about the way that you love yourself versus the way that you love others and how much those align, and really working towards correcting that and balancing that to be able to love you and respect you and take care of you. And truly in doing that, you will be able to love others better. Like that's so true. So true. The next thing I've learned is you can't run from your emotions or suppress them forever. At some point you will have to feel them. I think it's so easy to feel like if we just don't, if we just ignore, if we just suppress the pain and the feelings and the emotions of what we've gone through, that we'll never have to deal with it and we'll be fine. And it's easier that way because when I feel it, I can't function and I'm not okay. I just want to say, you cannot run from what has happened to you, and you cannot run from those emotions. And if you run, your legs are going to give out at some point. And you, at some point, will have to face these feelings and face these emotions. And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be painful. But I swear to you, feeling these things and really allowing the space to process these emotions as hard as they are, that's like actually one of the biggest parts of actually healing, is really letting yourself feel. And also feeling is a beautiful thing. Being able to feel and experience emotions is one of the most beautiful parts of the human experience, as painful as it is. But you can't run, you can't hide forever. Like, it will catch up to you. And you will have to feel things at one point. And I promise you, it's so much scarier to think about feeling these things than actually feeling them. Feeling them is uncomfortable, but feeling them leads to relief, to peace, to acceptance, and it helps you heal, go through the grieving process, all those emotions. And the next one, this is a heavy hitter. I remember I heard this once and I was like, oh, dang. That hurts. But it, unfortunately, I really do feel like is very true. You accept the love that you think you deserve. Because if you truly believed that you deserve better, and if you truly respected yourself enough, you wouldn't tolerate any less. That's not to say that there's patience, that there isn't patience and grace that you should extend to your partner in relationships, because no one is going to be perfect. But if you are in a relationship where you are being disrespected, belittled, abused, unprioritized, like all these things, and you're like, why do they treat me this way? Why do I stay? Why am I in this relationship? Because you accept the love that you think you deserve. So oftentimes, one of the most powerful tools to getting out of those relationships and or setting boundaries and improving your relationship and asking for more starts with, why don't I love myself enough to ask? Why don't I love myself enough to walk away if I'm being hurt? Why don't I love myself enough to find someone who treats me better? And that's a hard thing to face, but it is true. And guilty. Been there. Still working through it. Yeah, that one's hot. That was a heavy hitter. And this next one's really important. Self-love, self-respect, and self-protection is not selfish. I definitely grew up thinking that prioritizing myself, setting boundaries, respecting myself enough to set boundaries and to not tolerate mistreatment was selfish and not Christ-like. That's not true. It's extremely loving to them and to you to have boundaries, to respect yourself, to guard your heart. Like no person, no situation, no anything is ever fully secure. So there's nothing wrong with you protecting you and your heart. I mean, God even says it himself to guard your heart. That's not mean. It's not. I really want you to hear me when I say that's not mean. It's not selfish. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is some of the things I've learned about career/work, your career and work. This one is so true. And again, I know you guys have probably heard these things before, so this is not anything like groundbreaking or earth-shattering, but these are things that I've really, really, really believe in because I've literally seen them all come to light in my life. Sometimes the hard way, sometimes the easy way, mainly the hard way. But let's talk about the first one. The hardest part of doing something is simply starting to do it. This is so true. Whether it's a dream, a goal, a passion of yours, a business you want to start, the hardest part is just starting. Once you do it, I swear to you, like, it just works itself out. And like, you don't need to have everything in line perfectly to start something. Like, I've always been that type of person, a perfectionist, an all or nothing kind of person. And even with this podcast, like, I talked about starting it for months before I ever started it. But it's because I wanted it to be so perfect. And I wanted it to be the perfect time and the perfect cameras and the perfect situation and the perfect this because I wanted so badly, I just want to do it right the first time. And if I would have continued in that train of thought and in that way of thinking, I would have never done it because nothing is ever going to be perfect and nothing is ever going to be the perfect timing, the perfect, situation. It's just not. And you're going to start something and you're going to fail and you're going to backpedal and you're going to start something, you're going to change your mind. Like, there are things that inevitably are going to happen in your career and in the businesses that you start or in the work that you do or in the promotion you try to get. Like, it's inevitable that things are going to happen, but the hardest part is just starting something. Like, after that, it truly does get easier. So if you're contemplating doing something with your life or pursuing a dream or pursuing a passion, like, just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it won't ever be perfect, like, ever. The next one is, your time is valuable and precious. Don't give away months or years of your life to someone else's dream. So this one, when I wrote this down, I contemplated taking it out because I think that there's seasons for everything. And I think that it's inevitable that we are going to have to work for other people in our life, and or a lot of people will never even work for themselves, and their desire is to work for other people. It's all based on your goals, your dreams, school, not school, all the things. Like, everyone is doing something different. But all I'm trying to say is I spent a lot of years of my life at a job that I did like. Overall, it was hard. It's not like my dream job, but I had great bosses and I had a really good support system, and like, my team there was awesome. But I spent years like over devoting myself. Not to say that I don't think you should work hard at any job that you are at, because even the Lord says, like, no matter where you work or what you do, do it as if you are working for me. So I think it was honoring to the Lord for me to work hard and to be honorable to my bosses and all these things. But at the same time, it's like, don't get so caught up in working hard and sacrificing your time for someone else's dream or for someone else's business. Like, work hard, show up, do the best you can, but leave a space for yourself where you prioritize what you want to do, what matters to you, and where you want to go, and invest your time into that. Like, don't get caught up investing into someone else's thing, because it's not yours. If you want to do your own thing, don't get so caught up in doing someone else's just because it's comfortable, if that makes any sense. The next thing that I've learned, and this is something that I feel like I'm also kind of recently learning, is not all your passions are meant to be your job and or career. Some things are much better enjoyed when you can do them from a place of pure desire. So I think naturally we all really want to do what we love as a job, right? I mean, that's always kind of what we're told when we're young, is like, what do you love to do? What are you passionate about? Find a way to make it your job. And even though I think that's super powerful and super awesome, I've also learned that when you have a hobby and it turns into your job, the way you feel about it changes. Like this podcast, for example, when I started it, it wasn't my job. It was a passion. It was a passion project. And in a lot of ways, it was easier to do and it was more enjoyable because I didn't feel like I had to. I didn't, ever have to put on the work mode and or like, I have to push through this even if I don't want to, or even if it's not, or even if I don't feel like this is the best product and I want to do better, like I had the option to not. And also things shift in your mind when you're doing something just strictly because you love it and because you're passionate about it, versus when it's something that supports you or that pays your bills. Like it just shifts the way you do it. And not that that's a bad thing, but all of that to say, like, not all your passions are meant to be your job. So here's a great example. You guys know I started Elephants in the Kitchen. And even though I loved it and I'm not giving up on it, at a time I think I will reintroduce it in a little bit different of a way. I kind of learned and realized after doing it for a couple months that like, I love cooking because cooking is extremely grounding for me. It's extremely relaxing. It's creative. It's a form of self-expression. It's a form of like love. I love cooking for others because it's a way I express my love. And during Elephants in the Kitchen, I'm cooking, but I'm also talking to you guys. And I kind of realized that I don't know how much I actually love doing that. Because part of what I love so much about being in the kitchen is that it's just me and my hands. And it's like, it takes me out of my mind. It's like a form of relaxation for me and of self-soothing. And so it's not to say that I don't like obviously I make all my fun TikToks, cooking and stuff, but that's more enjoyable for me in a sense because I'm not sitting there talking. I'm just cooking and I'm able to be present. And so all of that to say, I think it's easy to think, I love doing this. I want it to be my job so bad. And it's not to say that that can't be the case, but I think when you're choosing what you do with your life and when you're trying to invest in a career, just remind yourself that not all your passions have to be your job. It's like, there is a shift when you go from doing something out of a place of passion to, I now have to do this and it's my job. And sometimes it can take the joy out of it a little bit. So let some things just be passions and hobbies. They don't all have to be work. So that's something that I feel like I'm learning and that I've learned. The next thing is, this is an unfortunate truth, honestly. I worked in retail for 4 years and I busted my butt. I worked really hard, long hours, long nights, long weekends, made a lot of sacrifices. And your hard work does not guarantee and equate to success or money. You can work way harder than the person next to you, and that does not mean that you will make more money than them, have more luck than them, have more success than them. Truly, it is about working smarter and not harder. It's not to say that you don't need to work hard to be successful in life, but most people who do reach success financially and or just in general with career, it's because they're thinking outside the box. It's because they're working smarter, not harder. There are people who will work hard for the rest of their lives and still never make the amount of money and or reach the amount of success that they want. And that's just kind of a hard truth about life. So choose what you do wisely. And with that being said, leads me into my next thing. Don't chase after money. Like, there's nothing wrong with desiring stability or security or money, but that will come and go in whatever you choose to do. And money doesn't make you happy anyways. Disclaimer. So unfortunately, it's just not fair like that. So when you're choosing what you want to do and you're starting to explore that, like, look at things that bring you joy, look at things that are going to be good for you long term, that line up with your values and your morals, all these different things. And that leads me to my next one, my last one about career and or work, is you don't need to know what you want to do with your life for the rest of your life at 18 years old. Like, your desires are going to change. Your hobbies are going to change. You're going to outgrow things. You are not going to be who you are now when you're 25, 26, 30, 40. Like, you have no idea. You cannot control the future. So things will change. You will change. Don't feel the pressure to feel like you need to know what you need to do and what you're going to do forever. Like, it's okay if it changes. And I'm still learning that in my life. Like, I love this podcast and I think I'll do it forever, but I also don't know. Like, I have continued to change as a human and I have to be okay with that. But the cool part about that is that, like, all of the things you do in your life and in your work and in your business, like, they all lead you to where you're going to go. So it's like, you may do something and it may not work out, or you may end up deciding you don't like it anymore, but it's okay because it's all like a part of the journey that leads you into finding what you really do love and what you actually want to do. So just don't like put so much pressure on yourself to feel like you need to know exactly what you want to do with your life at 18. And if it changes even after that, like, that's okay. Okay. The next 5 things are going to be about wellness. Balance is truly the answer. The all or nothing strategy will never lead to sustainability, only burnout. You guys know this about me, but I've always been such an all or nothing person. Like, with everything in my life. I go all in, full throttle, at the gym 7 days a week, eating super clean, like, extremes. I've always been such an extreme person, extreme one way or the other. And then when I'm not, I'm like, I'm just going to eat pizza and watch TV for 3 days. Like, I've always been such an extreme person. And if I've learned anything in this life, and this goes towards everything, your goals, your dreams, your habits, your physical health, your mental health, like, everything. Balance is key. Balance is the answer. If you try to go all or nothing, it's never sustainable. It never lasts. So that's why, even as, like I said on my last episode, as I'm setting these goals and standards and resolutions for 2025, it's like, it's about balance, moderation, everything. Like, that's the best thing. A little bit of everything. Obviously, you can cut out some things, but, like, balance. And the next thing about wellness, and I actually only have 3 for those, but I have extra of the other ones, so it'll all balance out to 25, is consequences are inevitably shaped by present actions. And this ties into what I said, which is you reap what you sow. The choices you make every single day, the small ones, the big ones, they all lead up to what your life is going to look like, what your health is going to look like, physical, spiritual, mental, relational, all of that. The little choices you make matter, and they all add up. It's like your life is a big sum of all the little choices you make in your day. So try to make good ones, even the little things, waking up and reading your Bible for 10 minutes instead of getting on your phone, waking up and drinking a glass of water instead of drinking a Mountain Dew, waking up and going and walking and seeing the sun instead of sitting in your bed on your phone. Like all these little choices. It's all the little things that add up. I always used to think it's like the big choices we make that really affect our lives. And it really isn't. It's really the little choices. So start paying attention to those and prioritizing those. The next one is, okay, so trigger warning for anyone who struggles with an eating disorder or disordered eating. I've done like a million diets in my life, specifically from the time I was like 18 to 21, which I feel like is when I had the most unhealthy relationship with food. I've done Whole30. I've done macros. I've done the medical medium diet. I've done all these diets. Diets are dumb, in my opinion, because they're not sustainable. Not only that, but when I have felt the best, physically, mentally, is when I have the most energy, is when I just prioritize eating whole foods that are organic and not processed and have good ingredients, quality ingredients. I've cut out dairy before, I've cut out gluten before, I've done all these things. I don't do that anymore as a whole. I mean, there are times when I eat less of it and more of it, but I eat all things now, but I care about the quality. I don't like food dyes, seed oils, all these things. You can have all those things without some of the bad parts of them, like seed oils, all these, like candy. I have found this brand that I love that doesn't use any like food dyes, So it's like, if I've learned anything about food, it's like prioritize eating quality whole foods. And it's a balance. I'm not saying you can't have the bad stuff too, but all these diets and all these things you see, like they're all just a bunch of BS. Prioritize real foods with good ingredients. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say about that. Because that's kind of like I could get into like a whole rabbit hole about that if I wanted to, but I won't. Okay. The next thing, and this is kind of not tied to any of these specific genres or sections I made, but I did not used to think this, but God's commands and what the word says about what we should do with our lives is not about anything other than God knowing what's best. Trust me, many times in my life, I've gone against what God advises me to do. And it has only ever brought me pain. And it has only ever brought me nothing but good. God's commands and His guidance is not about control. It's because He loves you. And the things He asks you not to do, it's because He loves you. And now I'm obviously speaking very broad, but I'm just saying, don't steal, don't cheat, all the things. We could get into it, but we won't. It's about love. He's trying to protect you from a lot of pain. And I see that now more than I ever have in my life. So that's just off the side of things. But the next thing is, I know I've said this, but I just want to clarify this. Going to therapy does not make you broken, damaged. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Going to therapy is the best thing that you can do for yourself. I don't care what you've been through. You've been through something in your life and it affects you. Therapy is the best. Again, you have to find a good therapy, but it's good. The next one is you deserve to heal from what you went through. That's why I feel like therapy is so important. You deserve healing. Like you deserve clarity, peace, acceptance, closure. And that doesn't come from who hurt you. That comes from the work that you do. And I feel like therapy is a huge part of that, in my opinion. Not to say everyone needs to go to therapy, but I think everyone should, personally. And the next thing is, this is kind of a heavy hitter. And I don't want to go too much into this because I feel like this may be something that I should just go into on a whole nother episode. But I wish I could scream this from the rooftops because I feel like this isn't talked about. And people don't want to hear this, but your unhealed trauma affects every part of your life. Like, the amount of people that I've met in my life who don't think they have trauma and or don't think that what they've been through, whether it's as a child or in a relationship or just in their life, they don't think it affects them. They don't think it affects the way that they act in relationships, the way that they cope, the way that they analyze and deal with their thoughts, and that it doesn't affect their mental health and all these different things. No, it affects everything. Like, so much. And so, yeah, I'm just going to read this little thing that I got from Google. Your unhealed trauma affects every part of your life. Unhealed trauma can significantly impact your life by causing difficulties in relationships, affecting your self-esteem, leading to anxiety and depression, triggering physical health problems, and hindering your ability to manage stress, often manifesting in behaviors like avoidance, anger issues, and difficulty in regulating emotions. Essentially, it can disrupt your daily functioning and overall quality of life if it's left unaddressed. We've all got to heal from our trauma. Seriously. It's affecting you way more than you realize. So many people just operate and function in daily life, not realizing how much better their life would be if they started working through what they've been through and they started healing that trauma. Seriously, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I think I will talk more about this in another episode because this is such a intense and long conversation, but I did just want to say that. And then I wanted to share my last 6, which are words of encouragement / quotes that have really impacted and or changed my life. The first one being, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And that's from Maya Angelou. I think it's so easy to beat ourselves up for the way that we acted I'll say this. So it's so easy to look at where we are now and the lens we have now in our lives back on the old us and judge the old person for the way that they reacted or acted in a certain situation. But it's so important to remember that you did the best you could at the time with the knowledge you had. But now that you have the new knowledge, you can do better and you can be different. And so that is one of the quotes that has really impacted me because it's easier for me to look back on everything that I went through and beat myself up for staying in certain relationships and tolerating certain things and all these different things that I did. But just understanding at the time I didn't know any better, but now that I do, I can change that cycle and that generational trauma that I stepped into. I can break that because I do know better now, but it's going to take work. So that's one of the quotes that I really like. And then this one is so good too and really important is sometimes good things fall apart so better things could fall together. I love that quote because that has been so evident in my life and everything I've gone through. It's like the things that I held on so tightly to that I thought were so good and that I thought was what was best for me. Like when I finally let go of all those things and I let God do his things, like I saw that he had so much better for me and that I was holding on to something that may have been good, but there was something better, So I love that quote. And this is another one that's really good. We are products of our past, but we don't have to be prisoners of it. And that's why I emphasize, like, what happened to you isn't your fault, but what you choose to do with it is your responsibility. And for me, that's obviously healing and working towards overcoming that cycle in my life and the generational trauma that my family has. So I love that. I love that quote. And then the next one, they kind of tie together, so I'll keep them together. But you are not everyone's cup of tea, and you will never make everyone happy. Like, you've got to stop trying to be what everyone wants you to be, because it's just not possible. And oftentimes when we try to do that, we lose sight of who we want us to be. And so getting comfortable with understanding that some people aren't going to like me, and some people aren't going to like the choices that I make and the way that I operate in this life and the things that I do, and they may not understand me, and that's okay. Like, that's all right, because some people will understand me and some people will like what I do. And that's just part of life. But it's good. It's like, you don't need to be everyone's cup of tea. You don't want to be. So that's something that I've learned that has definitely helped me in my life, because I used to try to be what everyone and everything, that everyone wanted me to be. And when I made someone upset, or when I wasn't what someone wanted, it made me feel so bad about myself. And I'm learning to not be that way anymore. So, but yeah, guys, those are my 25 life lessons over the 25 years of my life. I'm about to be 26, which is crazy. It's like so wild. It's so scary. So exciting. It's good. It's nothing to be scared of. Fear is just, a real thing, but it's like, it's awesome. It's cool. 25 years of life that I've endured, and 25 years of time that I've experienced to have learned and to shape me into who I'm going to be as a wife, as a mother. So I'm excited for the next chapter, but yeah, I love you guys, and I hope that some of that resonated with you, that you're able to receive some of that if it's for you, and if it's not for you, that's okay, but maybe one of the things I said was for you, and that's great. But yeah, I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you guys in a week.